My husband hid money from me, but the bank called. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. Trust is supposed to be the foundation of marriage, isn't it? That's what everyone tells you when you're walking down the aisle, what the officiant mentions in those solemn moments before you say, I do. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. The words roll off your tongue so easily when you're 26 and in love, when the future stretches ahead like an endless summer day, and you can't imagine keeping secrets from the person you've chosen to share your life with. 15 years later, I'm sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee that's gone cold, staring at a bank statement that has just shattered every assumption I've made about my marriage. The morning sun is streaming through the windows, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air like tiny secrets finally set free. Everything looks exactly the same as it did an hour ago. The same yellow walls, the same ceramic fruit bowl on the counter, the same wedding photo on the refrigerator. But everything has changed. My name is Sarah, and my husband David has been hiding money from me. Not just a few $100s tucked away for a surprise anniversary gift or Christmas shopping. We're talking about a substantial sum, the kind of money that could change our lives, that could have changed our lives months or even years ago, when I was lying awake at night worrying about our mortgage payments and whether we could afford to fix the roof that's been leaking since last winter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from the slow accumulation of small doubts that eventually built into the mountain of evidence I can no longer ignore. It wasn't always this way. For the first decade of our marriage, we shared everything. David and I met in college, both of us studying business, both of us with practical dreams of building a stable, comfortable life together. We weren't the couple who talked about being rich. We just wanted to be secure, to own a house, to maybe take a vacation once a year and not have to check our bank balance before buying groceries. When we first got married, we combined our finances immediately. Joint checking account, joint savings, joint credit cards. We made decisions together about everything from our monthly budget to major purchases. David handled most of the day-to-day bill paying because he was better with numbers and enjoyed the organization of it, but we discussed everything. Every expense over $50 was a conversation. Every financial decision was a team effort. I remember feeling so adult about it all, so mature and responsible. We had spreadsheets and budget categories and long-term savings goals. We talked about retirement accounts and life insurance with the serious dedication of people who were building something permanent together. It felt like we were constructing our life brick by brick, every financial decision another solid foundation stone. David got a job at an accounting firm straight out of college, while I went to work for a nonprofit focused on women's education. The pay difference was significant. His salary was nearly double mine. But we never treated it like his money and my money. It all went into our joint account, and we made decisions together about how to spend and save it. For years, this system worked beautifully. We bought our first house when I was 28, a modest 3-bedroom colonial in a decent neighborhood with good schools for the children we hoped to have someday. We furnished it slowly and deliberately, choosing pieces we both loved, compromising when our tastes differed. We had dinner parties for friends, hosted holidays for our families, created the kind of warm, welcoming home that felt like an expression of our partnership. Looking back now, I can see that the changes began around our 10th anniversary. Nothing dramatic, nothing that set off alarm bells. Just small shifts in the way David talked about money, subtle alterations in our financial routines that I rationalized away because I trusted him completely. The first thing I noticed was that he started handling more and more of our financial management without including me in the process. At first, I was actually grateful. My job at the nonprofit was demanding, and I was working on a major grant proposal that was consuming most of my mental energy. When David offered to take over more of the household financial tasks, it felt like a gift of time and mental space. "Don't worry about it," he'd say when I asked about paying bills or checking our account balances. "I've got it all under control. You just focus on your work." It seemed loving, considerate. David was always thoughtful that way, quick to notice when I was stressed and eager to take things off my plate. I didn't question his motives because questioning David's motives had never occurred to me. We were partners. We were on the same team. But gradually, I realized I was losing touch with the details of our financial life. When I'd ask about our savings balance or whether we were on track with our budget, David would give me vague, reassuring answers that didn't actually contain much information. "We're doing fine," he'd say. "Better than fine, actually. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff." "But I like to know the specifics," I'd reply. "I like to understand where we stand. Trust me, Sarah, I'm handling it. We're in good shape." And I did trust him. That was the problem, or maybe it was the solution to a problem I didn't yet understand existed. I trusted David completely, so when he told me not to worry about the finances, I didn't worry. When he started keeping bank statements in his office, rather than in our shared filing system, I assumed he was just being more organized. When he switched us to online banking and changed all the passwords to accounts I'd previously had access to, I figured he was updating our security. The first real red flag came during a conversation about vacation planning. We were discussing a trip to Europe that we'd been talking about for years, and I mentioned that we should probably wait another year to save up for it. "Actually," David said, cutting into his dinner with careful precision, "I think we could swing it this year if you really want to go." "Really? I thought we'd agreed our savings weren't quite where we wanted them to be for a trip like that." "Well, things have been going better than expected. I've been managing things pretty well, and we're in a stronger position than we were when we last talked about it." This should have been wonderful news. Instead, something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. There was a carefulness to his words that suggested he was editing his thoughts before speaking them, choosing his phrasing deliberately in a way that wasn't typical for our usual casual financial discussions. "What do you mean things have been going better than expected? Did you get another raise?" "Not exactly. Just, smart investments, good budgeting. I've been making our money work harder for us." I waited for more details, but they didn't come. David changed the subject to destination possibilities, and I let him. But something nagged at me. We'd always been specific with each other about money. Exact numbers, clear explanations, detailed plans. This vague talk about things going better than expected felt foreign and unsettling. Over the following weeks, I found myself paying more attention to David's financial habits. Not spying exactly, just being more observant about things I'd previously taken for granted. I noticed that he'd started receiving mail that he intercepted before I could see it. Bank envelopes, investment statements, documents that he'd whisk away to his office before I could glimpse the return addresses. "What was that?" I'd ask when I saw him grab something from the mailbox with unusual speed. "Just some boring work stuff," or "nothing important, just account statements." But if they were account statements for our joint accounts, why wouldn't I see them? And why did he suddenly seem so protective of boring work stuff that had never been secret before? I started to feel like I was living with a stranger, someone who looked and sounded like my husband, but who had developed this mysterious relationship with money that didn't include me. It was disorienting and hurtful in a way that was hard to articulate. I wasn't worried that we were in financial trouble. David's reassurances on that front seemed genuine. But I was troubled by the secrecy itself, by this sudden exclusion from a part of our life that had always been shared. The secrecy seemed to be growing. David installed a safe in his office, a small fireproof box that he bolted to the floor behind his desk. When I asked about it, he said it was for important documents, social security cards, passports, that kind of thing. Reasonable enough, except that we'd always kept those documents in our shared filing cabinet, and I didn't understand why they suddenly needed to be locked away. It's just more secure this way, David explained when I pressed him about it. With identity theft being such a problem, I figured we should be more careful about where we keep sensitive information. I couldn't argue with the logic, but something about his tone suggested there were things in that safe beyond our social security cards. When I jokingly asked if he was hiding treasure in there, his laugh sounded forced, and he changed the subject quickly. Around this same time, I noticed changes in David's spending habits. Not dramatic changes. He wasn't suddenly buying expensive toys or showing obvious signs of newfound wealth. But there were small things. Better wine than usual, a new suit that looked more expensive than his typical purchases, a watch that definitely cost more than the budget-conscious accessories he normally chose. When I complimented him on the watch, he seemed almost embarrassed. "Oh, this old thing. I've had it for ages." But I was sure I'd never seen it before. I may not be a watch expert, but I'd been married to David for over a decade. I knew his possessions, his style, his preferences. This was definitely new and definitely more expensive than anything he'd bought in recent years. The most troubling incident happened on a Saturday morning when I was looking for stamps in David's desk drawer. I wasn't snooping. He'd told me there were stamps in the top drawer, and I was trying to mail a birthday card to my sister. But when I opened the drawer, I saw something that made me freeze. Cash. Not just a few bills, but a substantial stack of hundreds, held together with a rubber band and tucked underneath some office supplies. More money than we typically kept in the house. More money than we typically had in cash anywhere. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't money I knew about. We typically discussed any large cash withdrawals, partly for budgeting purposes and partly for security. We lived in a safe neighborhood, but keeping significant amounts of cash in the house wasn't something we'd ever done. I heard David's footsteps on the stairs, and without really thinking about it, I closed the drawer quickly and stepped away from the desk. When he appeared in the doorway, I was standing by the bookshelf, my heart beating faster than it should have been. "Did you find the stamps?" he asked. "Oh, no. I got distracted looking at your books. I'll find them later." It was a lie, and it felt terrible. But I wasn't ready to confront him about the money, wasn't prepared for whatever conversation would follow. I needed time to think, to figure out how to approach what was clearly becoming a serious problem in our marriage. That night, as David slept beside me, I lay awake trying to make sense of what I'd discovered. Where had that money come from? Why was he keeping cash in his desk drawer without telling me? What else didn't I know about our financial situation? For the first time in our marriage, I felt truly disconnected from David, shut out of something important. It wasn't just about the money itself. It was about the trust, the partnership, the fundamental understanding of who we were as a couple. We were supposed to be a team, making decisions together, building our life together. But David seemed to be building something separate, something that didn't include me. I started paying closer attention to everything, the way David sorted through the mail each day, keeping certain envelopes and discarding others before I could see them, the way he'd grown protective of his laptop, closing it when I entered the room or angling the screen away from me when he was working on it, the way our conversations about money had become increasingly superficial and nonspecific. "How are we doing with the mortgage this month?" I'd ask. "Fine, no problems." "What about our retirement savings? Are we still on track?" "Yep, all good." "Should we think about refinancing with the rates being so low?" "I'm looking into it. Don't worry about it." Every conversation ended with, "Don't worry about it," and I was starting to resent those words intensely. I didn't want to not worry about it. I wanted to be included, informed, treated like an equal partner in our financial decisions. The breaking point came during a discussion about home repairs. Our roof had been leaking for months, and I'd gotten quotes from several contractors. The estimates ranged from $8,000 to $12,000, depending on how much of the roof needed to be replaced. It was a significant expense, but one we couldn't continue to postpone. "I think we need to go with Thompson Construction," I told David over dinner. "Their quote is in the middle range, but they have the best reviews and they can start next week." David nodded absently, cutting his chicken with mechanical precision. Sounds good. The only thing is, it's going to stretch our budget pretty tight. We might need to pull some money from savings. That's fine. We can handle it. Are you sure? Because I was looking at our last bank statement, and our savings balance seemed lower than I expected. David's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I thought we had more in savings. I could swear we had at least $15,000 in our emergency fund, but the statement showed less than $8,000. Oh, that? David resumed eating, but his movements seemed forced. I moved some money around. Better interest rates, you know. It's still there, just in a different account. What kind of account? Why didn't we discuss it? It's not a big deal, Sarah. Just some financial optimization. I didn't want to bother you with the details since you've been so busy with work. But I want to know the details. This is our money we're talking about. David set down his fork and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Look, I know you want to be involved in everything, but I'm actually pretty good at this stuff. My job is literally managing finances. Maybe it would be more efficient if you just trusted me to handle our investments and savings while you focus on your work. The word trusted hit me like a slap. The implication was clear. If I was asking questions, if I wanted information about our own finances, it meant I didn't trust him. It was a perfect manipulation, turning my reasonable desire for transparency into a character flaw. Of course I trust you, I said, but even as I said it, I realized it wasn't entirely true anymore. But trust doesn't mean I want to be kept in the dark about our own financial situation. You're not being kept in the dark. I'm just handling the details so you don't have to worry about them. There it was again. Don't worry about it. The phrase that had become David's go-to response for shutting down any financial conversation. I was tired of not worrying about it. I was tired of being treated like a child who couldn't handle grown-up information about my own life. That night, after David had gone to bed, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I went into his office and tried to access our bank accounts online. The passwords had all been changed, as I'd suspected. Every account that I'd previously had access to was now locked away behind passwords I didn't know. I felt like a criminal in my own house, trying to break into information about my own finances. I tried a few obvious combinations: our anniversary, our birthdays, our pets' names. Nothing worked. David had clearly chosen passwords that I wouldn't guess, which meant he'd deliberately made our accounts inaccessible to me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about David taking over more financial management. This was about David actively excluding me from our financial life. He'd changed passwords, moved money, created accounts I didn't know about, and built a wall between me and information I had every right to access. I sat in his office chair, surrounded by filing cabinets I could no longer access, and computers I could no longer log into, and felt more alone than I had since before we met. The person I'd trusted most in the world, the person I'd built my entire adult life around, had been systematically shutting me out of our shared existence. The next few weeks passed in a haze of suspicion and hurt. I found myself analyzing every interaction with David, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. I paid attention to his schedule, noting when he worked late or had mysterious errands to run. I watched him sort through the mail each day, whisking away envelopes before I could see them. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, and I hated it. But I also couldn't stop. The more I observed, the more obvious it became that David was living a separate financial life. He was receiving mail I never saw, accessing accounts I didn't know about, making decisions about our money without including me in the process. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was working from home, catching up on grant reports in the kitchen while David was at the office. The phone rang, and I answered it absently, expecting it to be a work call, or maybe my mother. Mrs. Patterson, this is Jennifer from Citizens Bank. I'm calling about your certificate of deposit that's maturing next week. I paused, my fingers frozen over my laptop keyboard. I'm sorry, which certificate of deposit? The CD in your name, account ending in 7742. It's a substantial amount, $85,000, and we wanted to discuss your options for renewal. The world seemed to tilt sideways. $85,000. In my name. In an account I didn't know existed. I think there might be some mistake, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Let me verify the information. Sarah Patterson, Social Security number, ending in 4829, address at 412 Maple Street. It was all correct. My name, my Social Security number, my address. But I had no memory of opening a certificate of deposit, and I certainly had no memory of depositing $85,000. Can you tell me when this account was opened? I asked. Let me see. It looks like it was opened 18 months ago. The initial deposit was made by check from a Citizens Bank checking account in the names David and Sarah Patterson. My hands were shaking as I wrote down the information. 18 months ago, David had taken $85,000 from our joint account and put it into a CD in my name, without telling me, without discussing it, without giving me any access to the account or even knowledge of its existence. Mrs. Patterson, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Can you tell me, is this account set up for online access? It doesn't appear to be. The contact information we have is just a phone number and mailing address. Would you like me to help you set up online access? Yes, please. As Jennifer walked me through the process of setting up online access to an account I didn't know I had, I felt like I was discovering a secret room in my own house. This money, our money, had been sitting there for 1.5 years, earning interest in my name while I worried about mortgage payments and roof repairs. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the account information I'd written down. $85,000. More than enough to fix our roof, to take that European vacation, to feel secure about our emergency fund. Money that had been hidden from me in an account bearing my own name. I felt betrayed, yes, but also something else. Vindicated. All those months of feeling like I was going crazy, like I was being paranoid about David's secretiveness, it had been justified. My instincts had been right. David had been hiding money from me. But why? That was the question that consumed me for the rest of the day. Why would he hide money from me, especially in an account with my name on it? What was he protecting it from? What was he planning? When David came home that evening, I was waiting for him at the kitchen table with the account information spread out in front of me. His face went white when he saw the papers. Sarah, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd really like to understand how we have an $85,000 CD that I didn't know about. David sat down across from me heavily, like a man who'd been carrying a weight for too long and was finally allowed to set it down. The money's not hidden from you, he said quietly. It's in your name. But I didn't know about it. I had no access to it. How is that not hiding it from me? I was protecting it. From what? David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, his expression was a mixture of guilt and something that looked almost like fear. From your job, he said finally. What does that mean? Sarah, you work for a nonprofit. Your salary is modest, and it always will be. I make good money, and I've been making even better money with some investments and side consulting work. But I was worried. Worried about what? Worried that if you knew how much money we actually had, you'd want to give it away. The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. I stared at my husband, trying to process what he'd just said. You think I'd give away our savings? Not maliciously, but you're so passionate about your work, about helping people. I was afraid you'd see this money and think about all the good it could do, all the programs it could fund, all the scholarships it could create. And I wanted us to keep it, for our future, for our security. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. So, you decided to hide it from me. I decided to protect it, for us. By lying to me, by changing passwords and hiding bank statements, and making me feel crazy for wanting to know about our own finances. I never meant for you to feel crazy. I wanted to make sure we'd be okay. I wanted to make sure we'd have enough for retirement, for emergencies, for the life we planned together. But you were willing to exclude me from decisions about that life. David's shoulders sagged. I know how it looks. I know I handled it wrong. But Sarah, I've seen what happens to people who don't save enough, who give away too much, who retire with nothing. I didn't want that to be us. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 15 years, this person I thought I knew completely, and realized I'd been living with a stranger. Not just because of the hidden money, but because of what the hiding revealed about how he saw me, how he saw our marriage, how he saw our partnership. He'd appointed himself the sole decision-maker about our financial future because he didn't trust me to make rational choices. He'd excluded me from information about my own life because he'd decided I was too generous, too idealistic, too naive to handle the responsibility of wealth. David, I said quietly, this money isn't just yours to protect. It's ours. These decisions aren't just yours to make. This marriage isn't just yours to control. I wasn't trying to control anything. I was trying to take care of us. By treating me like a child who can't be trusted with adult information? Sar. David flinched at that, and I could see in his expression that he was finally beginning to understand how his actions had affected me. We talked for hours that night, unpacking months of secrecy and mistrust. David showed me bank statements I'd never seen, investment accounts I didn't know existed, financial documents that revealed our true net worth. We were in much better shape than I'd realized, thanks partly to David's careful management and partly to some successful investments he'd made without consulting me. The money itself wasn't the real issue, though it took me time to understand that. The real issue was the partnership, the trust, the fundamental question of whether we were truly building a life together or whether David was building a life for us, while I remained unaware of the details. In the end, we decided to start over. New passwords that we both knew. Regular financial meetings where we discussed our situation openly and honestly. Joint decision-making about investments and major financial moves. It wasn't easy. 15 years of established patterns don't change overnight, but it was necessary. The certificate of deposit matured the following week, and we had our first real financial discussion in months about what to do with the money. Part of it went back into savings. Part of it paid for the new roof we desperately needed. And part of it, a smaller part than David had feared, but a meaningful part, went to establish a scholarship fund at my nonprofit for women pursuing higher education. David was surprised by how reasonable I was about the charitable giving, how carefully I considered the impact on our long-term security before making any commitments. I think he'd built up this fantasy in his mind of me as someone who would recklessly give away our future, when the reality was that I simply wanted to be included in decisions about our present. My husband hid money from me, but the bank called. That phone call changed everything, not just because it revealed the hidden account, but because it forced us to confront the deeper issues in our marriage. The secrecy, the lack of trust, the imbalance of power that had developed over the years. We're still working on it. Trust, once broken, doesn't repair itself overnight. But we're talking now, really talking, about money and goals and fears and dreams. We're making decisions together again, like the partners we promised to be when we said, for richer or poorer, 15 years ago. Sometimes I think about that phone call from Jennifer at Citizens Bank, about how a simple administrative error, calling the primary account holder instead of the secondary, revealed a secret that might have stayed hidden for years. I'm grateful for that mistake, for the accident that forced the truth into the light, because the truth, however painful, is better than living in the shadow of secrets, and partnership, however imperfect, is better than protection that comes at the cost of trust. We're richer now than I ever knew we were, and poorer than we were before, in some ways that matter more than money. But we're working on building something better, something more honest, something that includes both of our voices in the conversation about our shared future, and I check all the bank statements myself now, just to be sure.